Alright, welcome back. We are going to continue in our foldable notes. This time we're going to change gears a little bit, and instead of multiplying and dividing, we are now going to add and subtract rational expressions. As a warm-up, please complete these 5 problems. At the beginning of class tomorrow, we'll go ahead and go over them to make sure that you have clear understanding about what you're looking at. The biggest piece, the most critical component, is question number 3 and question number 4. How are you going to find the least common multiple of these quantities? We'll have a discussion about question number 3 and 4 at the beginning of class. Without understanding of these 2 problems, it is going to be difficult for you to solve problems involving addition and subtraction of rational expressions. Now that you've completed your warm-up assignment, let's go ahead and utilize those skills to help us out in adding and subtracting these. Question number 6 is a demonstration about how a minus sign distributes throughout a quantity. So please be very mindful and observant of this when you are getting into these problems. This minus sign distributes to both values of this quantity, rewriting it as negative w plus 5. So to rewrite this, I get 5w plus 1 plus negative w plus 5. Now this is very, very important because it changes how you're going to simplify your numbers. So in this particular problem, remember, when adding and subtracting, you need to have a common denominator. The denominator for the first fraction is 2w, and for the second fraction is also 2w. Since we already have a common denominator, I can rewrite this as a single fraction all over 2w. 5w plus 1 minus w plus 5. Now that I've done that, I'm just going to simply combine like terms on the top. 5w minus 1w is 4w, and 1 plus 5 is 6, all over 2w. It looks like this is not written in simplest terms because all of these numbers are divisible by 2. Since they're all divisible by 2, I will reduce this to simplest terms. 2w plus 3 all over w. Question number 7 is our next problem that we're going to be working on. Question number 7 does not have a common denominator, and likewise is subtraction. So please remember, you'll be distributing that minus sign throughout the entire problem. Now this is the way that I like to tackle addition and subtraction of rational expressions. I write an empty fraction bar, and then I figure out what my common denominator is going to be. In this case, the common denominator is going to be 7 times 3, which is 21. So 21a is my common denominator. Now, in order for me to make these fractions reflect this common denominator, I need to multiply the first fraction by the value which is missing from the common denominator. In this case, it's a 3. Because in order for me to turn 7a into 21a, I need to multiply 7 times 3. Whatever I do to the bottom, I must likewise do to the top. And so my first fraction becomes 6a minus 15b. Now, what number does it take to turn 3a into 21a? That number is 7. So I'm going to be multiplying this numerator by 7. Remember, it's a negative, so that's minus 7a and minus 28b. Now I'm going to combine like terms. That gives me 6 minus 7, which is negative 1a. 15 and 28 makes negative 43b, all over 21a. I'm looking for a common factor between these three numbers, negative 1, negative 43, and 21, and there isn't one, so I am in simplest terms. Because this is a quantity, this a and this a may not be canceled out. They are not the same value. So this is my final form. I am done. Question number 8. Now what we're going to start to see for the rest of this bit of examples is you're going to see problems that get a little bit more tricky as far as determining what your greatest or what your common denominator is. So we're going to have to do a little factoring here. We're just going to take out the GCF. That's 2 times m plus r. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to rewrite, and the way I like to look at my common denominator is 1 of every quantity which is in each of the fractions that are given. So now that I've factored this out, this has a 2 and an m plus r. The second fraction has an m plus r. So in looking at this, I have 2 actual quantities across all of my fractions. The quantity 2 and the quantity m plus r. So if I choose one of each of those, I get this as my denominator. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look carefully at each fraction separately and determine what is missing from the actual denominator that would make this the same as that. Now notice in the first fraction, the common denominator and the denominator is the same. Therefore, there's nothing I need to do to the m. So I'll just rewrite it here. Notice in the second fraction, I only have m plus r, which means that in order to make this denominator the common denominator, I need to multiply it by 2. So that means I get minus 4r. Now notice that these are quantities, this one here and that one there, so there's nothing more I can do. That is my final answer. In a lot of these problems, all you're really doing is combining these two fractions into a single fraction, because you'll notice here there's nothing that we can actually cancel or simplify. We just simply made 2 fractions 1. So if you kind of keep that in mind, it might help you in the future. All right, question number 9 will be the last one that we do together. I'm going to leave 10 and 11 for you to try on your own and come back to class with tomorrow. Please take the opportunity to practice so that you can get the answers, or so you can have questions and get those answered tomorrow. So I'm going to look at this one. I'm going to look for a GCF, and I notice that there's a W in both of them, and that 7 and 21 has a factor of 7. So I'm going to rewrite this as 7W times W plus 3. Now I'm going to draw my fraction. I'm going to write my common denominator by looking for one of each quantity. Notice I have a 7W, 7W, and W plus 3. My common denominator is going to be one of each of the different quantities that are above. So I have a 7W, and I have a W plus 3. Now I'm going to look carefully. What is missing from 7W to make the common denominator? Well, that's W plus 3. Whatever I do to the bottom, I must likewise do to the top. And there we go. So now what I have is 3U W, because I'm going to distribute that in. And now I get plus 9U. What is missing in the second fraction from my common denominator? The answer is nothing. So I simply put the u at the end. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine like terms across the top, and I get 3uw plus 8u over the common denominator of 7w times w plus 3. Notice across the top you have a GCF. That GCF is u. So I'm going to rewrite it as u times 3w plus 8 divided by 7w times w plus 3. That's my simplified form because there's nothing identical that will cancel out. And that is the final form of my problem. So when looking at question number 10 and question number 11 to do on your own, please be observant. Notice that you'll need to factor that one. Likewise, you'll need to factor this one and take the GCF out of this one. You're looking for one of each quantity to create your common denominator. Please come back to class with these two problems finished so that we can talk about how you found your answers and you guys can start to develop your own strategies for solving these problems.